This is my dad, the Reverend Illinois Green the First. And yes, he was named after a state. Don't ask me anything about that. My dad never talked much about himself, so I don't know as much as I would have liked to have known about his life. I know that he was born in 1914 down in Mississippi. I know that he went to war and fought the Nazis in the U.S. Army over in Italy and North Africa. After that, he came over to Louisville, Kentucky, where he met and married A.Z. Russ, hot young lady in her late 20s who already had, I don't know, an 11 or 12-year-old son. But for my dad, the challenge of raising a boy just coming into adolescence wasn't enough. So he and AZ got busy and produced 5 more kids within 6 years. I am one of those, second from the last and the youngest son. So Illinois and AZ were raising kids in Louisville, Kentucky. He got a job as a foundry worker at American Standard, a company whose name you may recognize from your toilet bowls or your bathtubs. And while he was raising 5 kids with his wife and toiling at the foundry, he got his GED. And after he got his GED, he went to Simmons Bible College, taking a class here, a class there, just pressing on until he graduated as the class valedictorian. As far back as I can remember, or from the earliest days that I can remember, my dad was a deacon, but then he moved on, if you will, to become a pastor. So that was him. Family man, foundry worker, pastor. He didn't have time for foolishness. And I don't remember any hobbies except maybe watching TV, and especially watching a good baseball game, or just a baseball game, period. My dad and my mom, both of them, they were so frugal that I thought we were poor for a long time. Definitely in grade school through middle school. Now, if I had been paying more attention, that notion might have been dispelled when my dad bought my mom a car, but, I wasn't. It definitely began to fade when, while I was in high school, they bought a new house, or at least a house that was new to us, in a neighborhood that at the time was still largely white. So here's the thing. What you grow up with is what is normal for you. So for me, having 2 parents who are married, in the house was normal. For me, having my parents be homeowners was normal. Having a dad be consistently employed was normal. American Standard did layoffs from time to time. And back then, a layoff wasn't getting fired. A layoff was, we're slowing down our production, so we don't need so many people. We'll call you back when we ramp back up again. Okay? So my dad got laid off a time or two. But when he got laid off, he found other work. There was a brief period of time when we had government cheese. But for the most part, my dad was consistently employed. So all of that was normal for me. It wasn't until much, much later, well into the second half of my life, that I began to realize how blessed I was as a kid, and how my folks were something beyond normal. Side note, my dad, although he was a devoted Christian and a minister of the gospel, my dad did also have a revolver. And he didn't just have a revolver, he had a set of brass knuckles. I am thankful that I never saw him use either of those things. But just a note, which is an indicator of the degree to which, as I said before, Dad did not have time for foolishness. When somebody tried to get too foolish, there might be highly unpleasant consequences. All right, this thing is already getting too long because I'm too slow. Let me try to speed this up because I really, really want to get at something here. I said that as a kid, I grew up thinking that we were poor. It didn't really sink in with me for a long time that, oh, wait, my parents have always been homeowners. It didn't sink in for a while after that, oh, wait, my parents have always, well, there was always this guy who would come to the house named Mr. Pettis on a regular basis, and he would give Dad or Mom some money. Mr. Pettis was their tenant. My parents owned rental property for as far back as I can remember. And the first house that we were growing up in, there were 7 of us, my parents and the 5 kids, just kind of jammed into 6 rooms. But the house was a 10-room house. They rented out the back 4 rooms. So they were renting out the back 4 rooms of their house. They owned separate rental property. And, again, I'm like in my 40s and 50s even. I'm gradually realizing this stuff. I'm thinking, wait, what kind of black man in the 50s and 60s has a union job? What kind of black man in the 50s and 60s is a homeowner? What kind of black man in the 50s and 60s owns rental property? And oh, by the way, when I was growing up, there were some people that my folks would call on in different circumstances to the extent that we knew their names. And one of those people was Irving Waterman. Irving Waterman was my dad's and my mom's attorney. what kind of black man in the South in the 50s and 60s had a union job, was a homeowner, owned rental property, and consulted an attorney on a regular basis, like was on a first name basis with an attorney. And it took me like almost my whole life to realize the extent to which my dad was a total badass. Eleanor Green was a bad dude. And I'm sharing all of this now. First of all, because it's simply way past time for me to brag hard about this brother. Second, to say how proud I am to be his son, and to acknowledge more fully the greatness, yes, I said it, the greatness of the stock from which I come. And third, to say that in whatever time I have left on this earth, I aspire to become, in my own spheres and in the appropriate ways, as much of a badass as the Reverend Eleanor Green was. And finally, to say that I am dedicating this channel to this man, and especially the work that I intend to do over the next 6 months between now and the end of the year, to give as much help as I can, especially to descendants of Eleanor Green, to help them to become total badasses. And to my neighbors here in Homewood, to give as much help as I can for them to become total badasses. Let's get it, y'all.